Hi, I'm Robin Paggi. I'm the training coordinator at WorkLogic HR, and today we're talking about one of my favorite topics, and that is communication. So the objective today is for you to understand what your communication style is, how it prevents you from getting the results that you want, and what you can do to get better results. And we're going to start with one of my favorite quotes: the biggest problem with the communication is the illusion we have achieved it. All too often, we think we're being very clear, people are nodding their heads, that they're indicating to us they understand what we're saying, only to find out that we are not getting the results that we want. What prevents us from getting those results? Well, a lot of times it's the way we're communicating, but a lot of times it's the interpretation that the other person puts upon our words. For example, my husband and I had an old dog named Roscoe. And toward the end of his life, Roscoe was getting a little incontinent and wouldn't always make it out the doggy door. And every time we cleaned up after Roscoe, which was mostly on the bedroom carpet, we agreed, after Roscoe dies, we're getting a new carpet. Well, Roscoe died one Saturday, and I went to the carpet store the following week to get carpet samples. I brought them back home and presented them to my husband. He chose one, and I'm on my way to call the carpet company. He asked me, "Where are you going?" I said, "To call the carpet company." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "To order the carpet." And he said, "I'm not ready to order carpet yet." And I said, "But we agreed, after Roscoe died, we're getting new carpet." Roscoe died. This is after. We're getting new carpet. And he said, "No, I've got things to do in the bedroom before we get a new carpet. I'm thinking a year or two from now." His definition of after was a year or two. My definition of after was now. So we have different definitions of words. That's why we have misunderstandings sometimes, and that's what complicates our communication with each other. How we are communicating inspires people to meet them or inspires them to run screaming in the opposite direction. And so which form of expression are you using? Do you communicate your needs in a positive manner that inspires people to meet them? Or do you communicate them in a negative manner that inspires them to go running in the opposite direction? And this is very true, and this is a little tidbit out of my own life. My grandmother would say that to me all the time, and maybe your grandma does too. "You never come visit." Yeah, and I'm never gonna either. But if Grandma would have said, well, I know, because I'm mean. If Grandma would have said, "I miss you. Could you please stop by and so we can talk for a while?" That would have inspired me to do it. Yeah, but her communication inspired otherwise. So which form are you using? So typical two-way communication is pretty complex. There's a lot going on there. And again, a lot of people think, you're talking, I'm listening, we're communicating. No, we're not. And this is one of the reasons why. When we're communicating, there's what the speaker thinks he said and what he actually said. Now, newsflash, you're not always saying what you think you're saying. A lot of times people aren't even paying attention to what they're saying. They think they know what they're saying and they let it go with that. And I caught myself do this in a very embarrassing moment at Mexicali. Before I became a vegetarian, I would always order a cheese omelet when I went to Mexicali. And so every time, cheese omelet, cheese omelet, cheese omelet, every time. And so one day, I was sitting there with a couple of coworkers that I didn't know very well, and the waitress came and I said, "Cheese quesadilla." But I thought I was saying cheese omelet. And I wasn't paying attention because I always order a cheese omelet. And so she brought me a cheese quesadilla, and I took a look at it and I said, "I thought I ordered a cheese quesadilla." But in my head, I was saying omelet. And she's looking at me like, what a weirdo. "Yes, that's a cheese quesadilla. You ordered it." She walked away, and my coworkers are looking at me going, "What's up?" She walked away, and I replayed it in my head to figure out how I ended up with a cheese quesadilla. And in the instant replay, I heard myself say it. And she came back, and I said, "Have I been saying cheese quesadilla all this time?" And she said, "Yes." "I'm sorry. I thought I was saying omelet." So here's the irony. You may be getting exactly what you ask for, but it's not what you want. Okay? So pay attention to what you're talking about. And then there's what the listener thinks that the speaker said, because the listener is going to put his or her own turn on it depending upon who they are. So for example, in my previous position, I was HR manager at a law firm, and I hired a secretary from Sacramento. And she told me that she was making $4 an hour more in Sacramento than what I was offering her. Well, yeah, cost of living is higher there, so yeah. And I said, Cost of living is higher there, sorry. And she said, is there any way I can make more money? And I said, well, at the end of your 3-month introductory period, we'll evaluate your performance, and at that time, perhaps we can give you an increase, is what I said. What did she hear? You'll get a $4 an hour increase when you're here 3 months. And so on her 3-month anniversary, she showed up in my office with her hand out saying, I'd like my $4 an hour more, please. And I said, that's not what I said. Now, unfortunately, we didn't have any of this in writing. So who knows what I said? But she knows that's what she heard. And now she didn't like me anymore as a result of the fact that I led her on and lied to her and did the old switch and bait and whatever. And I had an unhappy employee at that point. And part of that was my fault, because I should have sent her an email after our discussion that said, just to clarify or just to summarize our discussion, this is what was said. And that's when email comes in handy sometimes. All right, so then there's what the listener thinks she said and what she actually said, and then what the speaker thinks that she said. I mean, it's complex. It's all this stuff going back and forth. And here's one of the things that complicates it even more. People are lousy listeners. People do not listen for the most part. Our attention spans are that long thanks to Twitter. Oh, hello. And so people just aren't listening. They're listening for little sound bites. And here's one of the things too. You'll probably know this already. People don't read emails either. They skim them. And so that's one of the reasons we have so much miscommunication also, is because we're just not paying close enough attention to what's happening. So what can we do about this? Well, good news is we can. So all of this miscommunication led to Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, or something or other like that, to say no one would talk much in society if they knew how often they misunderstood others. Well, my updated version is no one would talk much if they knew how often others misunderstood them. And that's the thing, you are being misunderstood all the time. And you probably know that. And you're being so clear with what you're saying, and people are nodding their heads and saying, yes, I understand, only to find out that you're on different pages. So there are times even I've been teaching communication classes for 15 years or so. I have 2 degrees in communication. You'd think I'd know what I'm doing by now. And I do for the most part. Life is pretty good because I've learned how to communicate. But still, some days I leave going, I don't want to talk to another person again. Everything I've said has been used against me, has hurt somebody's feelings, has backfired on me. I told a joke, didn't get the laugh. I'm never saying another word. But we don't get to do that, do we? So, what can we do about it? Well, first of all, let's figure out what impacts our communication and how our communication style is affected as a result of that. Each of us has a communication style. We have an observable pattern of behavior that we engage in when we communicate. And when you figure out what that style is, then you can figure out why it works sometimes for you. You get the responses you want, and why it works against you sometimes. You don't get the responses back that you want. Now we're going to look primarily at personality, because your personality style has a huge impact on your communication style. And then we'll throw in some tidbits about how gender and age and culture impact our communication to a certain degree. But for the most part, your personality style is what is driving your communication style. And so we will take a look at those. Oops. There we go. So the first personality style we're going to look at is dominant doers. Now I want to do a couple of disclaimers before we get into these personality styles. First of all, we don't fit nicely into a category. I wish we did. It would make life so much easier. You just slap a label on somebody, you're done. You got them all figured out. We don't fit nicely into a personality style, but we have a predominant style that comes out. And people have been researching communication styles or personality styles since Aristotle roamed the earth. I mean, seriously, Aristotle came up with his own personality styles. And then in the Middle Ages, they added to it. And then at the turn of the century, they added to it. And within the last 60 years or so, there's been a lot of work done on communication styles, personality styles. And for the most part, they are in 4 separate categories. They're different names. Sometimes they're animals, sometimes they're colors, but mostly they all boil down to the same 4 styles over and over and over again. So the ones that I'm using are from the DISC personality profile, D-I-S-C, DISC personality profile, and the D stands for dominant doer. Now, the dominant doer will look at some of these things and I'll add to it. They're bold and direct. So what does that mean? They're bold in that they just fearlessly go wherever they want to go. And they're direct in that they say things without really thinking about it, without beating around the bush, without trying to be sensitive. They just say it. It's just out there. And sometimes, as a result of that directness and not filtering any of the words, it sounds a bit harsh to other people. So they focus on the big picture. They don't like details. And here's one of the things about their style. They don't talk in details. So there's a clue why they don't get the response that they want. And also, they don't like to listen to a lot of details. They tend to be competitive, aggressive, and ambitious. And so they're drivers. They're getting stuff done. That's what they do, and that's what they thrive on, is lots of stuff going on and getting things done and making things happen. And that's why they're really valuable, because they make things happen. They get right to the point, as I said, and you generally use as few words as possible. Now, one of the things when dominants are talking, they use few words, but when they're listening, they can't handle a lot of words either. And so you'll know if you're talking to a dominant personality style and you're using too many words, because they'll start telling you, yes, they'll start drumming their fingers, they'll tap their toe, they'll look at their watch, they'll look around, they'll do all sorts of stuff to let you know you are spending way too much time saying what you need to say. Okay, so just get to the point quickly. They may come across as forceful and intimidating to others, and dominants, regardless of their size, can be very intimidating. They don't have to be big people, they can be small people, but they have this presence that is just forceful to other people, and it scares some of the other personality styles. And really, people are scared of dominants sometimes. So there's a hint on why sometimes they don't get their desired response. They're concerned with achieving tasks and goals and often forget the needs of the people carrying out the work. They're just focused on getting things done, and getting things done as quickly as possible, by the way. Not just getting them done, but fast, and then you go on to the next thing. And that's just what makes them happy. And so as a result of that, they sometimes forget about the fact that people need things. They need to be spoken to nicely. They need to be appreciated. They need to be considered. They need their opinions to be heard. They need things. Well, dominants usually are oblivious to a lot of those things. And it's not because they're not competent or smart people, it's just that they forget about that stuff. They just want to get things done. And they're unafraid of conflict. And some people even say sometimes that dominants like conflict, because dominants like to be the winner. And that's one thing when you argue with the dominant personality style, then the dominant is going to try to be the winner, which means that the other person is going to be the loser. And that's one of the places that dominants suffer, is not taking a win-win approach to situations, because they don't know there's a win-win. All they know is that you hit the ball up and it's their turn to slap it down. And they're going to try to win, because that's their nature. So they often seem overly stubborn in defending their ideas, because they usually think they're right. If they came up with the idea, it's probably pretty brilliant. And so they're going to argue it until they have to. Now, they will admit they're wrong every once in a while, but they need to be right. They love to argue, and so good luck if you're going to try to prove them wrong. So, do you know anybody who is a dominant personality style?
Yes.
Yes, we work with some, don't we? Yeah, I'm a dominant personality style. And I didn't realize that about myself until someone pointed it out to me, and not in a nice way either. Yeah, you're a dominant, good for you. No, it wasn't that. It was, you're a dominant, that's why we're firing you, bye-bye. So, seriously. So, what helps the dominant get their response? Now, first of all, what response are they looking for? Fast results. That's what makes it happen for them. Okay, so that's what they're looking for. And they communicate in order to get quick results. I mean, that whole communication style is because of that. Direct to the point. Because if we spend a lot of time talking about it, nothing's getting done. So few words, say what you need to say, get it done, and move on to the next thing. So that's why they communicate that way. Now, what helps them get their desired response because of that communication style? How does it help them?
They feel like they won.
They feel like they won. What else?
They already have goals and they're just ready. They know what they want to achieve.
Exactly. They know what they want to achieve, and so it's easier to achieve things when you know what you want. Exactly. Anything else about that? The directness, the few words, all of that, that inspires people to give them that response, to give them quick results. Well, one of the things that people have told me is it's very clear what you want, because you don't mince words. It's not clouded in politically correct language or whatever. You just say what you want. So it's easy to give somebody what they want when you know what they want. Okay, so that's one of the advantages of having this communication style, is that you're clear. Okay, the other advantage of this communication style is that people are intimidated, and so they do it. I said jump. Okay, how high? All right, so people do it because they don't want the wrath of the dominant. And a lot of times, here's the thing, the wrath of the dominant. Dominants aren't mad. I'm not mad. Why are you upset? I'm not mad. They don't even know how they sound sometimes. And that's one of the things people would say to me, why are you mad? Why are you mad? Why are you asking me why I'm mad? And now I am mad that you're asking me that I'm mad. But I had this big giant groove in my forehead because my forehead was all messed up sometimes because I'm concentrating so hard on getting that task done. And so that's what it would make people ask me why I was upset. And so dominants often look mad, which is part of the intimidation factor as well. So they get the desired response because they're intimidating, because they're clear, because they're forceful, because they scare people. Why don't people want to perform for them? Because of all of those things. Yeah. Yeah. If you're too direct and you sound harsh, then people aren't going to want to work with you. And maybe they'll work for you until they can find another job someplace else. And by the way, the economy is looking up and there are more jobs available. So that's one of the things, is that directness hurts feelings. And a dominant might say, well, you know, I'm sorry you're so sensitive. No, that's not how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be, you're supposed to tone that stuff down. So let me give you an example. Dominants don't mean to be mean. It's just that it comes out that way sometimes. And one of the things about dominants is that they hold themselves to a very high standard. They hold everybody else to a very high standard also. And if you don't perform, you're just kind of not there anymore. You're just kind of invisible. And so I was working with another trainer many years ago, and he was not very good at his job. And so I told my boss, I don't want to work with him because he's bringing my game down. And so he got wind of that, and he came up to me and he said, why don't you like me? And I said, I don't like people I don't respect, and I don't respect you. And then I went off to lunch or shopping or whatever, and he went off to therapy, and he's probably still there. And I should be footing the bill for that in part. I meant nothing mean. I didn't mean to hurt his feelings. He asked me a question, I answered. End of story, right? Well, that was a long time ago. Now I realize you don't say that kind of stuff to people. One of the reasons is because you'll get fired if you do. And the other reason is because you don't get to destroy people with your words. That does not work. And so what can dominants do to be more effective with other people? And by being more effective, I mean getting the responses that they want, but it's because people want to give it to them. What can they do for their communication style? Soften, yes, and that was the advice given to me. Soften your approach, soften. And so I didn't know what that meant. Do I walk around like this? What does soften mean? But yeah, it's choose your words carefully. It's think before you speak. It's knowing the power that words have, and that you can build people up or you can destroy them with the words. It's smile instead of walking around with that big giant groove in your forehead. It's interacting with people on an interpersonal level instead of only talking about business. It's doing all of those things. And when you're able to do that, you're more than likely going to get your desired response from folks. So how many of you are dominant personality styles? Yeah? Okay, so have you been given that advice before? Yeah. Quite a bit. Yeah.
I have a question. I know, but is it a possibility to be, like Mixtures.
Yes, we don't fit nicely into one category. We're just talking about the predominant style that comes out. So the next style we're going to look at is the initiator influencer. And this is a lot like the dominant personality style. They're very high energy, go, 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 like a lot of stuff going on. They like to be up front, making things happening. They're fast decision makers. All of those things that dominants are. But they veer away from the dominant personality style in that they're all about people. So let's look at their communication style. They're expressive and spirited. So expressive means they've got a lot of facial expression going on, lots of body language going on, lots of vocal intonation going on. Spirited, and so they're very high-spirited and high energy. Okay, that's one of the reasons they get what they want. That's one of the reasons they don't get what they want, is that high energy. They value relationships, and it's all about the relationship, value acceptance. And so one of the reasons they communicate the way they communicate, which we'll find out is joking and storytelling and all of that kind of stuff, they communicate that way to get accepted from other people. They like approval. They like an audience to applaud for them. And so that's one of the reasons they communicate the way that they do. They are animated and expressive. As we said, they'll often speak quickly using lots of gestures and get easily sidetracked. And so they start telling a story that which leads to another story, which leads to another story, and then they'll frequently say, no, wait a minute, what was I talking about? What was my point? I don't know. It was fun just talking about it. Yeah, so not to the dominant personality style. You're sitting there going, you don't even remember what we started talking about? They're great motivators because of their enthusiasm. So they're great cheerleaders. They pump people up. They like to remember people. They like to have the birthday parties, make sure everybody signs the card, all of that stuff. And they're not afraid of conflict either. Like dominants, they'll rush into conflict. But then they hate it because that means somebody doesn't like me as a result of this conflict that we've just now gotten into. And they enjoy spirited discussions that involve a difference of opinion. Now, one of the things that's ironic about this personality style is that the reason they communicate the way they communicate is to gain acceptance and approval. But one of the things that this personality style is very emotional. As a result of all of this high energy and all this enthusiasm, they tend to be very emotional and can be very dramatic also. And they like people, and they're funny, and they're fun, and they're personable, and they're all those things until they feel that someone does not approve of them. And then they can be worse than the dominant when it comes to tearing people down because they mean to do it. Dominants usually don't mean to be mean, but initiators want to be mean to destroy people. And then when they do, they go, okay, let's go to lunch. And we're all best friends again, and everything's fine. Except the people on the receiving end are going, not so much, no. So one of my best friends is an initiator, and he runs an organization. And he's very jokey, very funny, just a source of entertainment. But he told me about a situation that he had with one of his subordinates, and something bad had happened. And he told his subordinate something bad has happened. And the subordinate said, you're joking. And he said, no, I'm not joking. It happened. You're joking. I'm not joking, you're joking. And this went back and forth for 15 minutes. And finally, the subordinate was convinced, oh, you're not joking, because my friend is always joking. And my friend would go through this 15-minute thing and then go, I was joking. And so that's one of the problems with this personality style is that in their quest to entertain and be a source of entertainment, sometimes people don't take them seriously as a result of that. Now, this is a condensed version of a 9-hour workshop that I do. And I was doing this 9-hour workshop for this organization, and this guy during the first hour said, nobody takes me seriously. And I changed my office, and I changed my clothes, and still nobody takes me seriously. And then during the rest of that 9 hours, every single time he opened his mouth, it was to make a little quip, a little joke. And at the end I said, that's why nobody takes you seriously. You can change your clothes in your office all you want. You got to change your communication style. That's what's going to get it done. So this style inspires people to perform how? Why do people want to perform for them?
Because it's easy to follow someone that's energetic and enthusiastic.
Exactly. So yeah, they inspire people to follow them because they like being the leader, for one thing. Yeah, and that high energy and that high enthusiasm gets people inspired to come to work. So what's the downside? Why won't people perform for them?
emotion side.
The emotion side, the dramatic side, pardon me?
Joking.
The joking, and especially those dominant personality styles. They're just going, come on, let's just get to it. That joking is a source of irritation for them. The storytelling is a source of irritation. And now you're talking to that person, and now you're talking to that person, and now you're talking to that person is a source of irritation for that dominant. That initiator is driving him crazy. Yeah. So that's why it doesn't work. Now, what can the initiator do to be more effective?
Learn when to do it.
Yes, when to do it. And there are times to joke. Yeah, there really are times. But learn when. What else?
Well, we just understand when things, calm down a little bit.
Calm down.
Things start to get really heated.
Yeah. And that's the thing with my friend. I mean, I love him to death and love being around him, but sometimes he is so high energy, it's like, oh, geez, bring it down, all right? Yeah, so it's sometimes he appears almost out of control because he's so hyped up. And that's a little scary. Okay. So.
Just gonna go skydiving once.
There we go. Steady satisfiers. So steady satisfiers are like the initiators in that they're very people-oriented. They want to please people, but they go about it a very different way than the initiator. The initiator is look at me and let me entertain you, and the steady satisfier goes quietly about his or her work, trying to perform and do things that please people. But they're not out there trying to be in the center of the limelight. So steady satisfiers, how do you recognize them? They're very considerate and sympathetic. And so they're considerate in that they want to, when they say, hi, how are you, actually want to know how you are and want to engage in a conversation with how you are. They are focused on people and interpersonal relationships, so it's all about the relationship and all about how are you feeling about our relationship and how am I feeling about our relationship and that kind of thing. They're wonderful team players because they want everyone to be happy, and that's why they communicate the way they do, is they want everybody to be happy, everybody to be getting along, let's all work together as a team. They don't like people who appear not to be team players. And who do you think those people are to them? Dominant personality styles for the most part. Yeah. And so steadies and dominants have a little bit of a conflict going on from the get-go because they're opposite personality styles. And so dominants are usually, I want to win, and the steadies going, that's not how we work together as a team. They are easy to work with. Everybody loves your steady satisfier for the most part because they're so easy to work with. Great listeners, so the initiators love them because the initiators love to talk. They need an audience, and the steady satisfier is a great audience for them. Their desire to keep everyone happy sometimes interferes with getting the job done. And I had a coworker once upon a time that I saw this in action. She was so busy trying to help everyone else, she wasn't getting her own job done. And so it was like, dude, focus on your own job. Don't be helping everybody else. But that's what made her happy. And that's what her role was, is to help everyone. And then they don't like conflict. And so they are going to avoid as much as possible. And they don't like people who appears just start conflict for no reason. And who are those people? The dominants and the initiators, yeah. So they're going, I don't like that about you. And they'll try to mollify people involved and smooth over the issues. And so they're usually the mediators, the negotiators, those kind of folks who are trying to show people other people's opinions. Well, I think what Robin was trying to say when she said, I don't like people who, blah, 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 is that she was trying to, and so they try to smooth things over and soften things and help the relationships and that type of thing. So they tend to be quiet. They tend to speak quietly. They don't have these big, giant, loud voices like dominants and initiators do. They're very tactful when they talk. They take time to think about the right words to say something. And they will often do it sometimes in such a way that people don't understand what they're saying. I witnessed someone being fired by a steady satisfier. And after that person left the office, I said to the steady satisfier, he doesn't know he just got fired. Now, you may think that's impossible for someone to be fired and not know it. But what the Steady Satisfier was talking about was new beginnings and fresh starts. He didn't say somewhere else. All right? And so seriously, I said, we got to get a dominant to go down and fire that guy. He doesn't know he's fired yet. All right, so that's what happens with steadies. And steadies a lot of times will complain, nobody listens to me. Why do you think people don't listen to them?
They're not getting the point across.
Because people don't hear what they're saying. I had a supervisor one time say to me, we need to get this done. I said, all right. She came back to me and she said, did you get it done? I said, I thought we were doing it. She said, no, by we I meant you. And I said, well, then you need to say me, otherwise I don't get it. It just, that we language just went right past me. I didn't get the point in all of that inclusive language. And that's what, and it may sound silly, but seriously, I didn't. She's the boss. I thought she was going to get the party started. But she's telling me I'm getting the party started. I didn't know. So supervisors who are steady satisfiers will frequently, first of all, if they have to correct someone, they will not go to that person and say, Brooks, you're late and you don't get to do that anymore. They will send an email out to everyone and say, we all need to remember that we need to be on time so we can support each other and we can all work well together. Thank you very much for your cooperation. And in the meantime, Brooks is going, I don't know who she's talking to. And the rest of the people are going, why is she sending that to me? I'm on time every single time. All right, so that kind of communication doesn't work sometimes, and that's why steadies will go, nobody listens to me, because you're not being direct. The first two personality styles are direct. They don't hear the indirectness. They don't know you're talking to them. And so that's what prevents them from getting their desired response, and a lot of times they're not speaking up loud enough. That's one of the things. And then the other thing is that they're not saying when something bothers them. Now, what steadies have a tendency to do is that they'll just overlook something and overlook something and overlook something until they get themselves backed into a corner, and then they come out with guns blazing because they've had it up to here. Unfortunately, they never said something at the beginning of when they were starting to have it. And so they end up looking like dominant personality styles. And so if you're a steady satisfier, you might be going, you know, I feel I'm schizophrenic sometimes because I'm nice and calm, but then I turn out, okay, well, that's what happens to steadies, is they get pushed and pushed and pushed, and then they come out as a dominant personality style and start being mean and direct and all of that kind of stuff. And they hate that about themselves. And there's the irony. All right, what they want is for everybody to work together nicely, but by them withholding their frustration with people or their disapproval of people, by them withholding it so that everyone will get along, they end up coming in and making everybody not get along by being a dominant. So, what should steadies do in order to get their desired response?
Talk more direct.
Be more direct. Anything else? Speak up sooner. Now, I believe waiting for a little while is good. As a dominant, I don't wait, and that's got me into trouble. All right, if you would have just waited a day or something, then things could have calmed down and you wouldn't have made it worse. All right, so I've learned that waiting is to my advantage. But the steady waits too long, and they need to pipe up sooner. And one of the things that I've had to counsel people as an HR consultant is those employers who never said anything to an employee about them not doing their job and then wants to fire them. And then they're getting fired and the person said, but you never said anything. That's not fair to that person, and that inspires lawsuits back to that employer as well. All right, and then finally, the conscientious critic. They're a lot like the steady satisfier in that they like things organized, well-planned, well thought out, at a slower pace. They like to be behind the scenes. They tend to be quiet as well. But they differ from the steady in that the steady is so people-oriented. It's all about making people happy. The critic doesn't think about people. The critic thinks about tasks, getting done. Who does that sound like? The dominant personality style. I didn't want you to name names. The dominant personality style. And so that's what those two have in common, is that they're so task-oriented. But they go about it very different ways. Okay, so while the dominant is fast-moving, the critic is slow-moving. While the dominant makes decisions without all the information, the critic can't make a decision without all the information. And that's what causes critics problems with other people, is because they don't want to move until they have all the information, they've analyzed it, and they feel safe to put it out there. That drives the dominant crazy. They can't stand that. Come on, let's go. You're slowing things down. The dominant does not want to hear all the details. The critic wants to provide all the details. So the dominant knows what the dominant is doing. When you make a decision, you've got to have all these details. The dominant doesn't want those details. They don't need those details to feel safe and secure. And if they fail, who cares? The critic can't stand to fail. That's huge for them. The dominant doesn't like to fail, but if we fail, so what? We'll get back up and we'll start a new company, we'll do something else. The critic doesn't operate that way. No, we will put it out there when its time has come and we were ready. Now, I used to work with a critic. Oh, he and I drove each other crazy. And one of the things that I did is I wanted a brochure created. And I said, okay, I'm thinking this. And then he'd ask me all these questions. Well, do you want this here? Do you want that there? Do you want that there? How about this? How about that? I just put it out there. Just put it out there. Just do something. Put it out there. He goes, no, I'm not going to just put it out there. I want it to be right when I put it out there. So I'm going to go through all these. He didn't say this, but this is what I heard. All these painstakingly, nitpickingly, rather stick needle in your eye details before I put that out there. Because once it's out there, I'm not touching it again, it's done. All right? So, yeah, that's how we drive each other crazy. So, they're very technical and systematic. They like logic. That's what they respond to. So, if you're illogical and you're talking about, I don't want to do this because I don't want to do this, that's not going to work for them. You got to have some reasons behind it. My husband's a CPA. He's a conscientious critic. He told me one time he had a client who said, I just feel the numbers are wrong. And he goes, well, where, how, what? And she, I don't know, I just feel. Oh, no, that does not work for the critic because there are no feelings involved. There's logic, there's rationale, there's numbers that always add up. Critics like things to be black and white. It's this or that. And it's always nicely, and you add it up, and it's the same answer every single time. And that's what rocks their world. They tend to focus on facts, lots and lots of minute facts, and technical details while communicating. And so again, when they're communicating all of these details, there are a couple of personality styles who can't handle it. Not just the dominants, but the initiators can't handle it either. Because the initiators will speak in a great amount of detail when they're telling you their story. But when they have to hear a lot of facts that are technical about stuff, that doesn't work for them. They just go off in their happy place and start thinking about something else. Methodical way of approaching problems and tasks work well independently. So this is a problem for the steady satisfiers who want everybody to work together as a team. And that conscientious critic just wants to go in their office and close the door and close the blinds and not have a single phone call or a single interruption all day long. My husband came home one day, he said, I had the perfect day. No one called, no one emailed. How was your day? I said, I had the worst day. No one called, no one emailed. All right, so but they love being alone and quiet and working out their stuff. Very detail-oriented, value accuracy, so right the first time. And uncomfortable with conflict. They don't like conflict either. And one of the things that they don't understand is why people get emotional at work. And I had a critic tell me in one of my training sessions, I don't understand why people get emotional at work. It's just facts, it's data, it's logic. Why would anyone get their feelings hurt? How can you get your feelings hurt over this? And really, he didn't get the fact that people have emotions and they get feelings hurt based upon how you talk to them. And the critic can sound an awful lot like a dominant personality style because they're not thinking about how to put those words nicely so that they're recepted well. They just say it in a great amount of detail. So, what are they looking for? What is all of this detail seeking and this logic and no emotion and all of that stuff? What response are they looking for?
They're looking for any response.
Well, no response would be good, yeah. But what they want, again, is they want to be able to do their job accurate the first time. And so that's what they're seeking from other people. Don't tell me your story. That gets in the way of my facts and being accurate. Don't give me your drama, because that gets in the way of me being logical and rational about these facts that I have to deal with. And so drama and emotion and those types of things really turn the critic off. And so you're not going to get your response from a critic if that's the way you're approaching it. So what can critics do to be more effective? I'm sorry?
See more emotions.
Yes, display emotions a little bit more. The interpersonal skills. Critics really can go a long way with just interpersonal skills like good morning and goodbye. All right, you don't even have to say how are you, because they don't care. Just good morning and goodbye and thank you. Thank you goes a long way. So just really basic stuff, and you would think that, well, these people sound like morons that they don't get that. No, that's just not a part of their world. They don't value that kind of interaction because it doesn't help them be right the first time. But there's the key. It can help them be right the first time because it will inspire people to work with them when they employ those interpersonal skills. So those are the personality styles. And again, we don't fit nicely into one category. We've got a lot, and sometimes at work we're a little bit more of this, but home we're a little bit more of this, and it depends upon what your role is and that kind of stuff. For example, a steady satisfier female can be a steady satisfier at work, but at home she turns into the dominant because she's the mama and she's got to get stuff done. Okay, so that happens as well. But some people like me, I'm pretty dominant wherever I go. And so some of us don't shift gears according to those roles. So just think about the fact. All of us have things that we do in our communication that help us get the desired response, but also prevents us from getting our desired response. No personality style is better than the other. No is worse than the other. We all have our challenges when it comes to getting our desired response. So, yes? Nope, just putting the hand out, okay. So one of the things that impacts our communication to a certain degree is our gender. And there is a masculine way of communicating and there is a feminine way of communicating. And again, we don't all fit nicely into this little category, but there have been enough research done to be able to demonstrate there are observable patterns of behavior in the way masculine style tends to communicate and the way feminine style tends to communicate. And they cause us to conflict sometimes and not get our desired response from people because of the way we're communicating. So I'm going to go through some of these in the interest of time. And the first one is competence and connection. So because of the roles that we've had for millions of years, men tend to have a tendency to demonstrate their competence. They know what they're talking about when they are communicating with other people. When you're a hunter and a protector and a provider, that's what you've got to do. You've got to look like you know what you're doing, or else people are going to destroy you, and then you don't get to do your role. Women, for the most part, have been nurturers, and even now, with so many women in the workplace, women are the primary caregivers for their children, and their job has been to be nurturing, to grow people. And so as a result of that, that's impacted the way we communicate, according to research, and I tend to agree. So let me give you a demonstration. My previous place of employment, I was sitting in my office one day. 2 male attorneys were outside of my office having a discussion about fantasy football. I don't know what fantasy football is. I mean, I know the term, but I don't know how it works. I think it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. And these guys were spending 15 minutes outside of my office talking about this team, no, that team is better, no, that person is better, no, that person is better. 15 minutes I'm in my office going, that is the stupidest conversation I've ever heard. Why are they having it outside of my office? So I grabbed my purse, went down to talk to a secretary that I had to talk to on my way out to lunch, and so we had our discussion of what we needed to talk about, and she said, oh, by the way, I really like your purse. And I said, thank you. I had a really tough time finding a Navy purse this year. She said, I did too. I finally had to go down to LA to go shopping. I said, where did you go? And we spent 15 minutes talking about a blue purse outside of the office of one of the male attorneys, who I'm sure was in his office going, that's the stupidest conversation I've ever heard in my life. Okay? But for me, it didn't matter what we were talking about. We were connecting. I didn't know the secretary very well. And so I felt good having this conversation that was building this relationship and creating a connection between us. by the same token, I'm sure the guys were having a great time one-upping each other because that's exactly what they were doing. And so I think that's a great demonstration of just when we talk, it's for different purposes sometimes, and we do it in different ways, and that creates conflict sometimes. Let's go down to action versus talking. I mean, this is an easy one. A masculine communication style is let's not talk about it, let's act, let's get it done. Where a female communication style or feminine communication style is I need to talk about it, I need to talk about it some more, let's talk about it some more after that, I haven't got it all talked out yet, I still need to talk yet. And the guys are going, oh, I hate that. Yes. So why, as a person who communicates to build connection, why would women need to talk and talk and talk until I feel better about whatever the issue is we're talking about?
Because they're the nurturing ones that do that with their children, I think, the most.
Yeah.
So they kind of seek that.
And the thing is that if we've had an issue and I'm walking around, there's that tension between us. Now, you may be oblivious to the fact that there's any tension between us at all, but I know there's tension, and I don't like that tension. Because here's one of the things that happens with women. When we are in a conflict with someone, there are chemicals that flood our body that do not flood males' bodies, that let us know we are in danger. And the reason we're in danger is because if we break that connection, we're vulnerable. We're out here in the world all by ourselves. Now, maybe not in the 21st century, but think about us millions of years ago around a campfire where the guys are all out hunting and doing their thing, and the women are by the campfire by themselves. If we break a connection and I'm outside of the group, I'm vulnerable. A lion could come get me. Something could come get me. So biologically, our bodies created this chemical for women. Men don't have it. That says, you are in danger, girl. Get yourself back right with that person. And so that's why we've got to talk about it. And I've got to talk about it more and more and more until I feel we're connected again. And then once we are, then we're good. We're good to go. Okay. So problem solving, venting, want validation. This is a cliche even at this point that men are born problem solvers and women just want to vent. But I think it's true. I think you've seen in your own lives it's true. And I don't have a good work example of this, but I've got a great home one. I came home one night and I told my husband my feet hurt, and he goes, take your shoes off. Problem solved. Let's go on to the next one. Okay. Good advice. Wish I would have thought of that. Now, this is one of the things that gets men in trouble sometimes is silent thinking. And as a matter of fact, on 60 Minutes this last Sunday, there was a great story on about the guy who invented Twitter. And he said one of his biggest weaknesses is that he thinks silently. Now, what's wrong with thinking silently? Nobody knows what you're thinking about. He thought silently and he made decisions by himself. And then he went back and he told people, well, if you're the dude that invents Twitter, you get to do that, right? No, because there were other people that were at the same level that he was. He got ousted from the company because, and part of his communication skills, because they felt he's not talking to us, he's making these decisions by himself, and then he comes back and he tells us how it's going to go. And even the other guys didn't like that. But that's a male tendency. While I'm watching 60 Minutes, I'm going, that's a male tendency. But that actually got him in trouble. While women, on the other hand, tend to think out loud. And so we're going through lots of options. And guys, you might have been hit with this one before. You don't particularly like this. Should I wear these shoes or these shoes? Wear these shoes. Okay, I think I'll wear these shoes. Okay, well, why did you ask me if you're not going to value my opinion? Oh, I do value your opinion. It's just one of many that I'm valuing. I value my own more. Giving information and asking questions. Now, this one I've definitely seen at the workplace. Men are more comfortable giving information than asking questions. When you have to demonstrate your competence all the time, you can't be asking a bunch of questions because that demonstrates you know what you're talking about, right? But women are much more comfortable in asking lots of questions, but what I have found is that sometimes that female tendency to ask questions doesn't sound like you're seeking information. It sounds like you're questioning my competence. And I had this happen to me once upon a time with a male colleague in a land far, far away. Well, why are we doing that? Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. I do trust you. I just wanted more information. So that's one of the reasons we conflict sometimes, is because seeking information sounds like questioning, and not providing enough information seems like you're withholding. So lots of differences between how the masculine and the feminine communication styles conflict that I could give a whole workshop on. Let's talk about age very briefly. We know that people of different ages communicate differently. The older you are, the more you like to rely upon face-to-face communication. The younger you are, the more you like to rely upon technology to communicate. That's presenting some problems in the workplace. One of the things that I have found as a person in, what do I want to call my, well, I'm a baby boomer. I just turned 50 a couple of months ago. And I caught myself, I didn't catch myself, I made a public display of the fact that I communicate about things that younger people don't know about. I was conducting my Rotary meeting, and we'd had a pancake breakfast as a little community service event. And one of the members' sons was there, he's 18, and he said, hey, I broke about 200 eggs at that pancake breakfast, so I'm the Eggman. I said, you're the Eggman? And he said, yeah. I said, you're the Eggman? And he said, yeah. And I said, you're the walrus, cuckoo, cuckoo. And he goes, what? Kind of like you're doing now. And maybe you know what I'm talking about. And you probably don't have a clue as to what I'm talking about. That's lyrics from a Beatles song. And so I made this big, giant public joke, and he's looking at me going, I have no idea what you're talking about. That's what happens when you get older, is you make references to things that people don't know what you're talking about. By the same token, younger people have invented a whole language that older people don't know what they're talking about either. So we've got some problems in the way our ages tend to communicate. Oh, gosh darn it. Let's go back. I try to do this cool little overhand, and it doesn't work sometimes. So knowing all of this stuff and knowing that there's all these things, who's out there? Okay, now there are people out there. Okay, back to me. Knowing that your communication style has this huge impact on whether you get the results that you want, what can you do to be a better communicator? Well, first, know yourself. Know how you tend to communicate. We just barely touched on stuff. There's all sorts of things about you you may not know about yourself. And so get feedback from other people. Take communication assessments. Just try to get to know yourself better. There are some things that people do that they are oblivious to the fact that they do. One of the things is little sayings that people have. One of my friends says, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Now, she probably has no idea. She says, I know, it drives me crazy. She has no idea she says this all the time. Yes, I know what you mean. So know yourself, get feedback from other people. How do I come across? Do I interrupt? Am I too loud? What am I? And if you have a significant other in your life, that person will probably be glad to tell you how you come across. So ask him or her. Know who you're talking to as much as you possibly can, because that's going to impact what you do next. And what you do next is, remember the reason for the communication. What's the reason we communicate?
Get a desired net.
Exactly, get a desired response. So if I know that, and I know that you're a chatty person, then I'm going to tailor my message for that. And it doesn't mean I'm going to be fake and put on a whole different personality style. It's just the Robin tendency is to walk into a room and go, okay, so what are we doing? Where other people want to go, hi, how are you? So what are we doing? So if I'm talking to that initiator influencer, I'm going to remember to say, hey, what's up? Great, so what's going on? Before I just jump into what's going on. Okay, it's not a big change, it's a small change. Or if I'm talking to a steady satisfier, I'm not going to be so direct. I'm going to soften my words. I'm going to soften my voice even, because I know I'm too loud sometimes for steady satisfiers. So tailor your message for the audience. It doesn't have to be a huge difference, and it's not being fake, because a lot of times people think it is. Well, I'm not being myself, so that's not right, is it? Well, this is what I equate it to. If you're speaking to a person who only speaks Spanish, should you continue to speak English because that's who you are? No. You should learn how to speak Spanish, right? So that you can communicate. But that's being fake. But that's speaking their language. So it's the same thing with this. And then check for understanding, and this is the hardest part about the whole thing, because usually what we do to make sure we're on the same page is, do you understand? To which they go, uh-huh. Do you have any questions? Uh-uh. Okay, we're good. No, you're not. They don't know. They think that after is a year or two from now, when you meant after is tomorrow. Okay, so how do you check for understanding? Get them to talk to you. Say, all right, so how are you going to approach that? Use open-ended questions. Tell me what difficulties you think you're going to have in doing that. Okay, when are you going to get started on that, and what are you going to do? Whatever, just get them talking to you. And then that way you can make sure that they're on the same page. And I guarantee you most of the time they will not be. So, communication works for those who work at it. It's work. It is work. Boy, when I found out my dominant personality style didn't work for everybody, I had to monitor myself closely. I had to listen to everything that came out of my mouth. I had to bite my tongue. I didn't say that snide remark that I wanted to. All of those types of things. I get home, I'm exhausted because I've worked at it all day. Now, is it worth it? I think so. The way we communicate with others and with ourselves ultimately determines the quality of our lives. It does. Our communication impacts whether we're getting responses. And whether we're getting responses determines how happy we are. And so I think it's worth the work. And by the way, the guy I told you about, the Twitter guy, he was ousted from his company because of his poor communication skills. He was invited back to come and run the show. And guess what he just invented? The square that you put on your, the little credit card thing. So, did he go away and improve his communication skills? I don't know exactly what he did, but he improved enough for them to invite him back, and now he's going to make bazillions of dollars as a result of that little invention. So, improving your communication skills might not make you rich, but it certainly will enrich your life. So, thanks for coming.